As the situation in Israel continues to worsen, especially for the Palestinian people, and as that war stumbles now into its fifth inconclusive month, the tensions between the White House and Tel Aviv continue to grow. And there's actually starting to be some more distance spreading between both the United States and Israel, as well as some of the other Western allies, as I think a lot of the patience starts to wear out on how Israel is conducting this operation, where it's going, and what it's doing to take care of the Palestinian people, which doesn't appear to be very much. But to try to address some of this, last night, Benjamin Netanyahu went on television to address his nation to kind of give them an update of what the situation was like. He did this after having a phone call with President Biden, apparently the first in a month. Those things have kind of tapered off as some of these conflicts have been growing. But here's what Netanyahu said. Pay careful attention to what he says about their intentions.
Citizens of Israel, a short update on my last conversation with U.S. President Joe Biden. At the very beginning, we agreed that Hamas should be eliminated. But during the war, it's no secret, we had differences of opinion about the best way to achieve this goal. In the beginning, I told the president, Hamas cannot be defeated without the IDF entering the Gaza Strip. In our last conversation, I told him, it is impossible to complete the victory without the IDF entering Rafah. And this in order to eliminate the rest of the Hamas battalions. We will do the same this time. I want you to know that I have already approved the IDF's operational plan, and soon we will also approve the plan to evacuate the civilian population from the battle zones. President Biden, whose support I appreciate, asked to present to us the proposals of his people both in the humanitarian field and on other issues. And as I said, there were times we agreed with our friends, and there were times we did not agree with them. In the end, we always did what was essential for our safety, and we will do so this time as well. And while we are preparing to enter Rafah, which will take some time, we continue to operate with all our might. We continue to operate in Khan Yunis, in the central camps, in the elimination and capture of senior Hamas officials, as we did now in Shifa, in the elimination of many hundreds of terrorists. As I promise you time and time again, we are determined to achieve absolute victory, and we will achieve it.
So important narrative. So the United States has been saying that it's a red line for the United States, for Israel to go into Rafah if they don't have a plan to take care of the civilian populations afterwards. You may recall also we've mentioned here in the last number of days or so that Israel or the United States has said, hey, we're going to send some people over there to give you some pointers on how we conduct, targeted operations that take care of the civilian population, which Israel was not too keen on having. They aren't very interested in our tactical opinions about how things should be done on the ground because they want to have a complete free hand. But the pressure has continued to build from the Democratic voters on the Democratic administration here in the United States. And so, of course, that always gets the administration moving if they think that their voters in an election year are not with them on this. And of course, there's a lot of daylight between the Democratic administration and their voting population, as we've talked about in recent elections during the primary situation, where Michigan and Minnesota especially had large percentages against the President Biden as a signal of their unhappiness. So we'll continue to watch and see how that happens. But the issue right now is that this continues to put more pressure on Biden, to put more pressure on Netanyahu, which he doesn't like. Now, he has said, and he did say here again, that he is going to have this operation in Rafah, no matter what. He's already made the decision. The question is going to be now how he's going to do it. Now, you may recall that a little bit of time ago, we showed this clip on here where Netanyahu said that it's going to be weeks, not months, and we're going to go at it pretty soon. Here's what he said.
Once we begin the Rafah operation, the intense phase of the fighting is weeks away from completion. Not months, weeks away from completion. And that is, we've already destroyed 18 out of the 24 Hamas terrorist battalions. So we have and 4 of them are concentrated in Rafah. We can't leave the last Hamas stronghold without taking care of it. Obviously, we have to do it. But understand, too, that I've asked the Army to submit to me a double plan. First, to evacuate, to enable the evacuation of the Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and obviously, second, to destroy the remaining Hamas battalions, that gets us a real distance towards the completion of our victory. And that we're not going to give it up. If we have a deal, it'll be delayed somewhat, but it'll happen. If we don't have a deal, we'll do it anyway. It has to be done because total victory is our goal, and total victory is within reach, not months away, weeks away, once we begin the operation.
So you see, he always harps on this, and has continued to, and he did in the comments from last night. Total victory. That's what he's going to go. Now, interesting there. He said in that February 25th clip there that they're having a double plan to take care of the Palestinian people as well as tactical to take care of the to service to destroy the Hamas remaining battalions that he claims in there. But now it's interesting in the comment from last night that he also added in there that while they're going to be doing this Rafah operation, they're going to continue to be doing things in Gaza City, in Khan Yunis, and several of these other places, which begs the question, where are you going to send the 1.5 million people that are in Rafah right now? If you're going to go in and you're going to have some sort of safe corridor, where are they going to go when you just got through saying you're going to continue combat operations in all these other areas throughout the Gaza Strip? So that's the first area where there seems to be some contradiction. But then the second issue is what about the survival of these people? Because as Anthony Blinken said on Tuesday, there is a real problem here, as he put it on Tuesday.
According to the most respected measure of these things, 100% of the population in Gaza is at severe levels of acute food insecurity. That's the first time an entire population has been so classified. We also see, again, according to, in this case, the United Nations, 100%, the totality of the population is in need of humanitarian assistance.
Okay, something you need to understand right there. That's 100% of over 2 million people that are trapped in the Gaza Strip. They can't get out because no one will allow them to leave, even though the Israelis want them to leave. They can't. So they are strapped in there, and now 100% of the population is now dependent on food aid coming in indefinitely. No one has any idea when there's even the possibility of sustaining to get back to a regular form of life, to where people can just, have grocery stores to go to or markets, et cetera, so they can just have a typical life and have a job. So right now, the condition after 5 months of war has rendered the entire Gaza Strip something where now the global community is going to have to feed them every single day indefinitely. I'm not sure if the world has come to grips with that, but that's the condition we're at. And that is before Israel launches off on this additional operation in Rafah. So the casualties are only going to continue to go up, but that's just going to cause yet more problems and make it even more dependent for a long time. And so the world better start coming up with some kind of plan. How are you going to do this, sustain them on an indefinite basis? I'm going to get back to this in a moment, because that has direct ramifications for how this war so-called ends. But also because this is now putting more pressure on the White House, whether they're discovering that the morals that used to guide our policies on things or not remains to be seen. But now you saw Blinken. That's what he said a couple of days ago. Here's what he said. I believe it's earlier today, where he also admitted that there is some serious problems with the humanitarian conditions.
We actually have a resolution that we put forward right now that's before the United Nations Security Council that does call for an immediate ceasefire tied to the release of hostages. And we hope very much that countries will support that. I think that would send a strong message, a strong signal. But of course, we stand with Israel in its right to defend itself, to make sure that October 7th never happens again. But at the same time, it's imperative that the civilians who are in harm's way and who are suffering so terribly, that we focus on them, that we make them a priority, protecting the civilians, getting them humanitarian assistance. And we've been leading the effort to do that, to get more in, to get more to the people who need it.
So you see, he's still trying to walk that tightrope. He still wants to always say, but we're going to, we trust, we're behind Israel. They can do what what they need to do, but we want to take care of the civilian population. So you see those things, it's really hard to see how they go together, especially when you heard Netanyahu last night reemphasize again, as we've shown many times here, that he's going to do whatever he thinks is in his best interest for his country's security, meaning we'll listen to our American friends, but at the ultimate, we are going to do what we need to do. So he told his people that. He has meant it every time. Netanyahu routinely lies and says all kinds of things that are not true to his benefit. But on the times he said that he'll do that, he has meant that. And I don't see any reason to doubt his conviction now that he's not going to listen to us if he doesn't want to. Now, we'll see if Blinken actually goes through with that, if there actually is a UNSC, calling for an immediate ceasefire. But here's the problem. I checked into that before we came on air here today, and at least what's being publicly talked about, there's no enforcement mechanism. They're going to be calling for an immediate ceasefire to get help into the people. But there's no enforcement mechanism as it doesn't. And this kind of doublespeak is something that many people around the world are seeing all over the place, and it's not lost on them. And Marwan Bishara of Al Jazeera has been one of the biggest outspoken critics of the duplicity on the United States side from the beginning. And here's what he specifically said about Blinken's doublespeak.
For the past 5 months, he's been very selective with his facts, very deceptive in his declarations. So much so that just last week, he was telling us that Israel has did everything possible to get aid, food, to the people who need it most in Gaza. One cannot hear a more flagrantly misleading statement by any diplomat, especially when at the same time, this past few days, the European Union foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, has been saying that Israel has been weaponizing hunger. So how could these two foreign policy chiefs, one of the United States, one of the European Union, say something so diametrically opposed?
Now, the United States ought to, by all rights, be leading on this issue, because we have, at least publicly, we with our mouth have for decades, for 100 years, always talked about how we're willing to help others, that we prioritize the international rules-based order, that we prioritize helping the weak, and especially those who are in distress and those who have no power and are being killed in war, that we stand with them, that we try to protect the innocent civilians. That's what we have always claimed. And so by all rights, we ought to be leading on this issue, friend or no friend of Israel. There should be prioritization here, and it shouldn't just be reflexively whatever the government in Israel says. Unfortunately, that's been kind of how it is. Now, others are in the West are starting to maybe get beyond the point to where they're just aggravated and are taking some actions. Canada has, at least as of a couple of days ago, suspended its military aid to Israel and violate because they had been violated the Palestinian people, and they have not been taking care of them as they said they were going to. And Israel's reaction to that was history will judge them for this, which I thought was a really strange thing to say. If you want to convince Canada to get back on the track of doing it, I don't think that they're going to be shamed into that when you're continuing to kill people, innocents by the day, and not take care of them. Now, even today, the UK is talking about suspending their operations. Their defense minister is saying they're considering withholding military aid if help is not given to the Palestinian people. So it's kind of an embarrassment for the United States that we're not leading on this, but others are, which may end up compelling us on too to go into this. But to just kind of reinforce just kind of where we're at on this, instead of compelling Israel to actually open the gates and let this food aid go in there, you have us still harping on this whole floating pier issue, as Kirby talked about earlier this week.
The first pieces of it are on the way now. They left Norfolk just a little bit earlier this week. It's going to probably take about 6 to 8 weeks or so for all the pieces to get in place and for it to become operational. We are working with partners in the region to figure out the details of how the material will be secured on and off the floating dock, and of course, how it will be distributed inside Gaza.
Now that's already starting. Gary actually found some initial footage of within the Gaza Strip that are actually bringing some rocks and some other things up onto the location where the pier is going to be. So they're trying to get that done. And of course, I'm in adamant opposition to the United States doing this, because it's going to take another 6 to 8 weeks to get this thing actually operational so that food can come in from the sea, while there are literally thousands of food trucks just waiting on the other side of the fence that could come in this afternoon if there was the political will in Israel to do that. Instead of talking about how expensive we're going to be doing this military operation, using the United States Navy to do what Netanyahu wanted to do, and instead of opening the gates, if Blinken was, instead of saying we're going to pass some UNSC resolution, as meaningful as it could be, or at least certainly a break from the past, it would be far, far better if he said, okay, Netanyahu, we're going to follow Canada's lead. You don't open that gate by noon tomorrow, then there won't be any more airplanes of U.S. military aid going to you. Your choice. We're not going to tell you what to do, but you make your own choices, because that's our choice. You also aren't going to tell us what to do. That's what I wish I could hear from the United States government, that we're going to prioritize what we think is right and to take care of the people that we claim that we want to defend. And that is the innocent people who have no power. And now 100% of them, by the secretary's own words, are at food security, and many of them already are starving to death. So why in God's name would we want to wait another couple months before we get large-scale food aid going in there when it's already sitting on the border and it could go in? There's no good answer to that. There's probably plenty of real answers, and they're not palatable. And in my view, they aren't American. But the fact is, we are not using any of the leverage we have, and we are taking the slowest and the most expensive path to get food in to the Palestinian people. So you can pass this resolution with no teeth, but it's not going to change the realities on the ground. And as Netanyahu again reiterated last night to his people on national television, he's going to do what he wants to do. So the question is, how far are we willing to go on this? But listen, while we dither, people are dying on a daily basis in Palestine. There's additional challenges, though, because this war will not succeed what Netanyahu claims. He said in that clip we showed there from late February, that total victory is coming, and just within weeks, not months, but weeks. And now he's saying as soon as they start this Rafah operation, he's going to claim that those final 4 battalions of Hamas will be liquidated and destroyed, and presumably at some point he'll then call victory. But as I told you at the outset, 100% of the population of Palestine is now in basically on the doorsteps of the world to have to take care of for every single meal indefinitely, because Israel has destroyed so much of the Gaza Strip. Every city they've gone into, they have wiped out entire sections of it, so that there's, even water stations, sanitation, schools, mosques, everything, buildings that, for food distribution, for markets. I mean, everything that you need to sustain life has been wiped out. So if you have a condition to where the entire population of 2 million people is dependent on the outside world for its every meal, where is this going? Does Israel have some fantasy that after these alleged final 4 battalions of Hamas have been destroyed and killed, and let's say that Israel, because they have so much military power, actually succeeds at that, and all of the Hamas fighters are killed, every single one of them, then what? What next? What happens to all the remaining male population of the Palestinian people there when thousands upon thousands of their women and children have been killed? Hundreds and actually tens of thousands more have been wounded. The hospitals have been incapacitated for a long time. So there's nowhere for them to even get medical care, even just regular medical care, much less for acute wounds of war. How are they going to respond to that when they have no jobs? There are no jobs because there's now no even capacity to have an economy. Where are they going to go, and what are they going to do? Are they going to just become passive and say, okay, all right, well, Hamas was destroyed and now then if we want to, have a life, we better do whatever Netanyahu says. No population on the planet is going to do that. No population going to do that. They're going to be more filled with anger and more bent towards violence because they're going to believe there is no other path. Trying to be peaceful doesn't even register. I mean, it would be absurd from their perspective to follow that path. So what, given human nature, what it is, does Netanyahu think he is going to win after these weeks have passed and Rafah has been pacified militarily, according to his definition? It is absurd to the highest degree, because the population, as the months will continue to go by, will become more and more hopeless and more desperate. And you saw what they did on October 7th when they felt hopeless and desperate. Now multiply that times 100, times 1,000, who knows? Because it's so much worse than it was before. It's hard to even imagine. Israel is building at a great cost for itself insecurity indefinitely. You've heard me say it on this channel many times. I'll repeat it one more time here because it is vital to get this right. If there is no peace and a future hope for the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, there is no future and security or hope for anyone. Neither side will have peace and security or a hope for the future unless both do. That's a fundamental observation. There's no deep knowledge necessary here. You don't have to have a cultural understanding of, somebody who's studied for decades and something. It's just common sense. It's just basic human norms. That has to be the case. So now then you have a situation to where the U.S. is going to be on the hook primarily, and certainly the Western world, to feed these people. Israel's not going to do it. If they were going to do it, they would be doing it now. They're not. They don't want to. They still want the conditions to be so bad. I think it's pretty self-evident that they want finally enough pressure to build on other regimes in the region to take the Palestinian people out. We'll see how that works. But I think that you will be building not just internal insecurity, but even more pressure on some of these regimes in the area to eventually turn against Israel. And it's not inconceivable that given enough time and pressure on both the populations and the governments in the region, that there could be a new war against Israel. And look, they've used so much ammunition now, and they are now requiring themselves to conduct occupation duty and to quell. So they're going to have to use their military now indefinitely just to maintain a civil order in there. How's that? How do you think that's going to work? I mean, you talk about a situation that's just like infested with insurgency type vibes. I mean, this is it on steroids. There is no path to peace for Israel here. Netanyahu is leading his people. If you care about Israel, then you should be the first one to push back on what he's doing here, because he is creating an incredible volatile mix for the people of Israel indefinitely, both within and without. That, my friend, is the truth. I don't care what Joe Biden says. I don't care what the Secretary of State says. And I certainly don't care what Benjamin Netanyahu says. The facts on the ground are evident for anyone willing to see them as they are. We'll have to just wait and see how this continues to pan out. Right now, I hope that we do get this food in there. As much as I don't think we should be doing this floating pier, if that gets food in to keep the people alive, then so be it. Make sure that that's the first priority. Make sure they take care of the people who are the most powerless on the planet right now. Let's get that taken care of first. But then we have to do everything we can to put some pressure on our own government to do something that makes sense, that's in line with American values, because this ain't it. We'll see how it continues to pan out. You can count on us to continue to be with you. And in fact, tomorrow we're going to have Professor Omer Bartov of Brown University, former IDF officer. He's going to give us a little bit more in-depth from the ground of what's really going on in Israel and some of the things that we don't see in Western media. Be sure to join us tomorrow on that. I believe it's 1:30 p.m. on Friday. And we will see you tomorrow on Daniel Davis Deep Dive.